Here's what some people are saying about the Projection Booth podcast.
The Projection Booth is single-handedly the greatest film podcast you could ever listen to or could possibly want.
Top notch. 5 stars. This has quickly become one of my favorite film-related podcasts. Always interesting.
A completely unpretentious yet fully comprehensive look at films from all genres.
The Projection Booth podcast, with new episodes available every week at projectionboothpodcast.com.
You guys look like... What do they look like, Jimmy?
Dorks. They look like a couple of dorks.
Get those birds! Nerds! Nerds!
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
What? Are you kidding? We got us a family here.
Can you dig it? Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
You are listening to the In the Mouth of Dorkness podcast. Here are Brad, Lisa, Brian, and Darren.
Welcome to another edition of the It Modcast podcast. With me is Lisa Gullickson.
Quick, suck it before the venom reaches my heart.
Wife Dork.
I became operational at the HAL plant in Urbana, Illinois, on the 12th of January, 1992. My instructor was Mr. Langley, and he taught me to sing a song. If you'd like to hear it, I can sing it for you.
Yes, I'd like to hear it, Hal. Sing it for me.
It's called Daisy. Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer due. I'm half crazy, all for the love of you.
And Brad Gullickson.
And for gosh sake, watch your language.
That's not going away anytime soon.
Mouth Dork.
It's as satisfying to me as coming is, you know? As having sex with a woman and coming. And so, can you believe how much I am in heaven? I am like getting the feeling of coming in a gym. I'm getting the feeling of coming at home. I'm getting the feeling of coming backstage when I pump up. When I pose in front of 5,000 people, I get the same feeling. So I am coming day and night. I mean, it's terrific, right? So, you know, I am in heaven.
And I'm your host, Darren Smith.
Warm. Warmer. Disco.
The Disco Dork. Musubi is the old way of calling the local guardian god. This word has profound meaning. Tying thread is musubi. Connecting people is musubi. The flow of time is musubi. These are all God's power. So the braided cords that we make are the God's art and represent the flow of time itself. They converge and take shape. They twist, tangle, sometimes unravel, break, then connect again. Musubi. Nodding. That's time. And welcome to the It Modcast podcast.
That was a great episode, guys. Have a great night.
Thank you all for listening.
And until next time. We are not fucking around with our quotes.
No, it's gotten really elaborate.
Yeah, that was really, that was a performance from all three of us.
More like monologues, not even quotes.
Well, I am a method actor, so please call me Hal.
Yes, Hal. So, how was your weekend, Dork, Hal?
I have 4 days Comic-Con.
Yeah, this was actually a stressful fucking day, wasn't it, Darren?
Yes, ma'am.
Because we were responsible for Brad's future happiness.
I don't think we've really talked about it on the podcast.
Because it was too emotionally strung.
We didn't want to, I guess we didn't want to jinx it, maybe, so we had to be sure that all 4 of us had all 4 days before we go on our Comic-Con tangents.
That's right, because these 3 bastards all got 4 days on pre-registration Saturday. And
for San Diego Comic-Con.
Thursday and Sunday.
You had the
donut.
The donut.
But
no jelly in that shit.
Your wife came through for you, as always.
Thank you.
Right. I was the lucky one who got out of the waiting room first, but really it was a team effort getting Brad and your brother Zach.
Yes, Jimmy.
These tickets. So I had 2 laptops up.
I had 3 plus a desktop.
And then we had who was on our team? Fatima.
Yeah, and Asha and all of our friends. Basically our con family were all lending a hand in helping us get the badges for Brad and my brother.
It was really just like a beautiful coming together, and in the spirit of our fistful, and in the spirit of, fate of the furious. We worked as a family, coming together, looking out for each other.
We did.
I'm going to pass you all Coronas.
Aw, that's so sweet.
So with that out of the way, just be prepared to hear from us repeatedly about our excitement for the pending date of Comic-Con.
This is the first year where we are only 3 months away from Comic-Con, right?
Yeah.
May, June, July, right?
Yep.
So, little over 3 months, and they only just now did open registration.
I know they've been keeping us on the fucking pins and needles.
Yeah.
About getting your tickets, and people have been already investing in hotels and travel just on the faith that they will be getting these tickets. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah.
We had a friend today, a listener friend, I won't mention, just in case she wanted this private, though I don't know why she would, who was in the waiting room hoping to get tickets and was not as lucky as us. And there's lots of people in that same position looking to go to Comic-Con for the first time. And, finding out 3 months in advance that dream is not going to come true. I pity them.
My favorite thing about...
They're not so great. Like us, the lucky ones.
Comic-Con.
It must be a karma thing. What did you do?
Registration day.
Somewhere in my youth and childhood. Sorry.
Is that you can go onto Twitter and click on the hashtag SDCC 2017 before open registration, and you see all these hopeful, desperate, frantic individuals just dying to get into that waiting room and succeed in getting all 4 days.
Happy tweets.
Well, happy, excitable tweets.
Mm-hmm.
And then, after registration has closed, you have 300,000 individuals who are pretty darn happy, like us.
Yeah.
But then you have...
Wait, is it 300,000?
I want to say yes.
Shit.
We're really good at making up numbers. I'll make up a few now.
Okay.
7,700. Infinity billion.
No.
11,700.
No, I'll give you the other number, though. 300,000 who got in.
Yeah.
And the, 10 million.
Billion.
10 billion who did not. And then following their hashtags and so much anger and hatred towards San Diego.
I do not want to see those gifts.
There's some pretty great gifts.
But
fuck you guys, because I'm going to Comic-Con.
Look, we haven't gotten there yet. Don't put bad karma and energy out into the universe. So until we get there, until we touch down, just, we have to kind of humble brag.
Yeah, that is true. That's true. If I told you about my heart palpitations.
Oh, my
Brad,
goodness.
stop.
Because, of course, Brad, for some reason, by some twist of fate, is always at work when registration happens. So it's always me sweating bullets in front of the laptop.
He does that shit on purpose. Brad, you make the schedule,
Hold on. First off, yes, I do make the schedule. I get 1 weekend off a month, all right? And I make that schedule out a month ago. Comic-Con's like, oh, by the way, this Saturday in 3 days, open registration.
Whoops.
I can't fucking plan around that.
Yeah.
Well, we have our badges, so we're set.
Right.
Yeah, suck it, losers.
Aww.
Man, so be on the lookout. We're going to have more content, especially once we touch down in San Diego, for all of our listeners who are unable to go, and we're just going to be bombing you,
flaunting that shit so hard.
But, this is the thing. 2017, the first year we went was 2011. This is our 7th Comic-Con.
Yes.
All right? I remember being in the airport for Comic-Con 1.
Yeah.
And I was with this kid who was like 15 years old, flying out to San Diego by himself. And I was like, well, how many Comic-Cons have you gone to? He's like, oh, this is my 9th.
He had to be, yeah.
And I remember being angry at that kid. I was like, 9? You've had 9 and I haven't even had 1 yet. How dare you?
But you guys became kindred spirits. I mean...
Well, now I get it. Comic-Con's mine and not yours.
Yeah.
And I don't want any of you to be there with me except the people who got in because we were chosen.
Yeah.
That's right. The gods smiled, and we've got our 4-day badges.
I was looking at, because I was rejoicing during my lunch period and doing cartwheels down Arlington. And I found like this Terry Crews quote about Comic-Con. He was there for Expendables 2 a few years back. We all saw that in Hall H. We had great seats to see Schwarzenegger and the group. And he said, when you look at what this genre is, it literally becomes a religion to a lot of people. It's about what you believe in. Action movies have created that. When you see a guy like Chuck Norris, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sly Stallone, and Bruce Willis all together, it's literally like Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Not to be sacrilegious, but in the action world, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Which one is which?
What do you mean?
Like which one's the father?
Whoever's the
oldest.
oldest.
Who's the Holy Spirit?
Stallone would be the father because he's the oldest, right? He's in like 87.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then who's the son?
Well, I mean, I think the father's Schwarzenegger.
Schwarzenegger's the father?
Yeah, and then the son is Stallone.
Stallone.
Because he's a wannabe.
So Schwarzenegger just had him at a very young age.
And the Holy Spirit is Jean-Claude Van Damme because he's not really that great.
Aww.
But he's everywhere doing the good work.
Yeah.
No.
Interceding.
Bruce Lee is the Holy Spirit.
It does feel like that.
That's probably true.
Okay.
That is true.
Yeah, but because he's not in the Expendables.
Yeah.
Loss on him.
Yeah.
I bet he's really heard about that. Up in heaven. Action movie heaven. We're all one family under the sky, people.
Yeah.
But it is like when you go out to San Diego.
I want to make more Trinities. So if that's the Trinity of action movies,
I was trying to get to a pointed,
what's the
state
Trinity
of being here, Lisa.
Okay, well we
using
got to
Terry
do
Crews.
that another day.
A
fistful of Trinities.
Yeah.
Shit. Okay, sorry.
Put that on the whiteboard.
That's it. All I'm saying is that Comic-Con is a beautiful place where all like-minded individuals are welcomed.
So listeners, prepare
if
for
they get through the waiting room.
Prepare for Conrad.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he walks fast. He takes for granted that he's so tall and can see everything. Us tiny people just bouncing behind him, going, "I wonder what it's like from up there. It's got to be great."
We've wasted 11 minutes on my joy of getting badges.
That's not wasted. Brian's not here today, so we have his 20 minutes.
That's right.
Bullshit.
I just burned through Brian's Weekend Dork.
Yeah. So, Lisa, how was your Weekend Dork?
I've had a great Weekend Dork,
Yep.
as per usual, living life to the fullest.
Yep.
Today, as I was waiting in that waiting room, I've been listening to the new serial This American Life follow-up series, S-Town, a.k.a. Shit Town. And it's 7 chapters. They were all dropped at once. Perfect for binging. So I've listened to, I'm on chapter 6 or 5. So I've listened to like 5 hours of a podcast, I guess. And so I'm like knee deep into it. And it is fucking fascinating. It is so interesting. It has some similar elements to Serial, in that, like, as you listen, a mystery unfolds. But this mystery, it's just like a hydra. It's like fucking sprouting heads left and right. You never know where it's gonna go, and it's really, really interesting. I don't want to say too much about it because I don't want to spoil it, but I want to just say just enough to make Darren listen because I want to talk to Darren about it.
I will.
Okay, so so it's made by, like, you're gonna see some of the same in the I guess I want to say cast, but that's not the word. The company that's putting this together, the people who are putting this together, the behind the scenes people,
the production.
Yeah. You're gonna see some of the same people. Ira Glass is one of the editors on it. Sarah Koenig from Serial is one of the editors on it, but it's being hosted by Brian Reed, who's also from This American Life. And about maybe 3 or 4 years ago, he was contacted via email by this guy named John B. McLemore, who wanted help uncovering some corruption that he was seeing in his, what he referred to as Shit Town in Alabama. He's from a small town called Woodstock, Alabama. And one of these, he sees a lot of corruption in the police, and it's a really impoverished area. it's a crime-riddled area just because of a result of this poverty. It's extremely small-minded, and John B is like this weird, like, kind of Jiminy Cricket conscience looking around, going like somebody has to do something about this. So who does he reach out to but NPR? And he reaches out to Brian Reed, and one of the mysteries just so happens to be the murder of a teenager, where this murder just feels like people are talking about it. It's like this open secret that there was a scuffle between two teenagers during like this drug-fueled party, and they were bullying a child, and teenagers were bullying one particular person, and that person pulled a knife and slit one guy's throat, then another guy kicked him into the head until he became a paraplegic. That was, and that kid eventually died in the hospital. And it was like this open story that everybody was talking about. So Brian Reed starts interacting with John B. McLemore to get more information, and eventually ends up going to Woodstock to investigate. And like I said, this mystery does not go the places that you expect, and things are not as they seem. But it creates this interesting window into the really dark underbelly of small town America, and you really start becoming fascinated and attached with John B. McLemore and the character that John B. McLemore is, because he was born in this town. He's never lived anywhere else. He lives with his mom, who is suffering from dementia, and he's caring for his mom. But he seems to be this like liberal-minded genius. You know, he's fascinated with science, and he's hyper concerned with global warming, and he's up with current events. You know, clearly, you know, he has to be somewhat liberal because he's reaching out to somebody from This American Life to like shed some light on this situation. But it and he's like like, this is a small town with 97 churches, and he is an atheist, and he's very open about all of his, you know, beliefs. He's outspoken, but there definitely seems to be like, he seems to have like manic depressive tendencies. So he's kind of hot and cold with the investigation a lot of the time, and it just feels like he's being driven mad by living in this, like, he's like being driven mad by the apathy that he sees around him. So it's Brian Reed and this like crazy clockmaker investigating the corruption in this small town. And just like Serial, it's absolutely it's immersive. It's you like, the second you find yourself being suspicious of one person, you turn around and go like, oh my God, maybe it's this person, maybe it's that person. They really create this this quilt of suspicion. It's really, really fascinating. My only complaint actually is the fact that they dropped all 7 episodes at once.
Yeah.
Because like one of the best things about Serial was that everybody was in, you know, and so like, you know, I would just wait for on my my podcast app for waiting for that Serial episode to pop up, and you know, talking, Darren, what do you think about Adnan this week? Yeah. Do you think you know?
It is interesting now in this culture of binge watching, binge listening. Iron Fist will drop, and it'll have 13 episodes. I think 13 episodes. I watched one because Jesus. And the conversation around Iron Fist lasts for a week because we've all watched the entire thing, and then it's done. And it fades away. And I just want to leave that thought there for a moment because that's going to factor in quite a bit to my Weekend Dork as well.
Right. But I miss, like, especially with something like S-Town, it's very spoilable. So...
Maybe that's why?
Yeah, but then to me, it's more interesting then to drop an episode, let people ruminate on it, and speculate for a week until everybody's in this fever.
You're right. Because if you drop it all at once
then,
and someone doesn't get to listen to it like weeks or months later,
So I've been real busy, so I haven't been able to listen to it.
Right.
And so now I feel this pressure where I'm like, I have to listen to it all in one day. And you're not going to be able to, like with Serial... Like, this is how obsessed I am with podcasts. But if I like an episode, I'll listen to it once and then I'll listen to it again. And, you know, I can't do that with S-Town.
I mean, a quality podcast should be like a quality film, right? So I expect everyone to hear our episode, think about it, ruminate, and then listen to it again like you would a fine movie like Jaws.
Yeah, exactly. You gotta mull it over.
You can't appreciate this Weekend Dork on one listen.
You gotta wring this shit out. There's a lot of juice in this sweet rag of a podcast we're making.
The little Easter eggs I put here and there, like some stuff you just won't get on the first listen.
Shots. How many times can you hear that ice clink in Brad's glass?
All of this is to say, Darren, you've got to listen to S-Town.
I will.
And maybe you can do a little follow-up next week. Because it is fascinating.
I will have it. I will have that done before we record next. I find it interesting, and I'm very curious to... I wish I could be a fly on the wall when they lay out how they're going to present this podcast and how they map out how they're going to trickle out information as for the listener to present this next head of the Hydra and to guide that mystery.
The craftsmanship is astounding because this is not like they took a long weekend and they investigated this. I mean, this was years. This was years. I don't want to say too much, but Brian Reed really put in years into this story. And so then, and you imagine he has his recorder all of the time. It's got to be hours of material.
Oh man.
Hours. And then if you think about the time he spends in the library and going through police reports and all of this stuff, all of that is an astounding amount of time. And then to take that and turn it into this saga. I mean, it is beautiful.
I mean, really what, Serial proved to me and what it sounds like S-Town is accomplishing is that investigative journalism is alive. And maybe not so well like it used to be.
Right.
But, the age of All the President's Men has not completely died on Fox News.
And I like this because this is a story that's extremely personal and it's filled with a lot of a cast of characters that you get engaged in, just like Serial. So to me, it's just like the way into investigative journalism is through the personal story, and that's what's going to get people engaged, and that's what's going to get people interested. I also listened to Where in the World is Russell Simmons, or whatever that one was called.
Oh,
it's a podcast?
Yeah.
And that one was also fascinating, but I didn't feel like it had the finesse of a Serial. But it was also very fascinating.
Is Russell Simmons his name?
Yeah, I feel like
no,
the other one.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The one in the sparkly shorts with the hair. What's his name?
Oh, Richard Simmons.
Richard Simmons. I was like Russell Simmons is like.
Everybody knows
right.
where he is, I guess. Richard Simmons.
Making
Where in the
a shit
world
ton
is
of
Richard
money.
Simmons? Yeah, I listened to that. So I didn't take notes on that, which is why I said.
Well, spoilers, Lisa, for where's Richard Simmons? Where is he?
Oh, he's just in his house.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I heard they found him. He was okay.
No, he was never really. Yeah, he was never really missing. He just kind of unplugged from the world. So, he was like this engaged person.
He was off the grid.
Yeah, and he just kind of was just like, and he was very involved with his fans in a way that I felt was kind of mentally unbalanced.
Yeah.
You know, he had talking about a manic energy. He had like a kind of a manic energy where there was a Nerdist episode that he did a couple of years ago where I you know, like he has this exuberance that feels wrong. That feels like, oh, you're chemically sped up. Not that I'm saying that he's on drugs, but I'm just saying like there's something in his chemistry that is upset. And I think that he hit a bad patch, you know, in his life, and he just decided that he didn't need that engagement with people anymore. Yeah. And I think he's done so much good for so many people that he can do whatever the fuck he wants.
Yeah.
As long as he's happy and as long as he's, you know, treating himself the way that he deserves, then he should be able to do whatever the fuck he wants. Yeah. There's also a couple of things about that to me seemed a little bit invasive because the whole thing was done by like a personal friend of his. And so for a personal friend to like then do like this expose on your life,
yeah.
you know, as kind of, I guess, a cry for help because he was no longer in touch with his friend.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a lot involved in that. But to me, like it was worth the listen, but I would much rather listen to something that is crafted like this.
Like Guest Town.
Like Guest Town.
All
so
right.
awesome.
Not too long ago, Dave Chapelle dropped 2 comedy specials on Netflix.
That's right.
Speaking of where in the world is someone, Dave Chapelle had been on a hiatus. He'd been doing, from my understanding, he'd been doing like pop-up shows on the circuit, doing stand-up in a little hole in the walls and things like that.
Yeah, he had a reputation where he would drop in somewhere and then do like an hour and 40 minutes or something like that.
Yeah, you caught those 2 specials, as did I.
I
Talk
did.
about them.
2 Netflix specials.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to open with, I found these 2 Netflix specials extremely funny. They everything that you loved about Dave Chapelle from his early stand-up, all of that stuff is still there. He had a thread going through, so it's 2 specials. One he taped in Los Angeles, one he taped in Texas, somewhere in Texas.
And the one in Los Angeles was more recent than that Texas show, is my understanding.
The Texas one was recorded in 2015, and the Los Angeles one was recorded in 2016.
Okay.
Right, and I forgot where I was going with that thought, but like they're both interesting to compare and contrast because the crowds, of course, are extremely different. The atmosphere of the 2 places, like you can see in the second special, in the Texas special, that he does a little crowd handling in that special because there's some rowdy people in the crowd, and he takes out a stool and he sits down and he brings the energy way down, and he is a master. He's a master. He's so funny. In the LA special,
At the Age of Spin.
Yes.
That one's called.
He has this thread going through about the 4 times he met O.J. Simpson.
So good.
So good. And it pays off so hard. He is so funny.
Yeah.
And I just found myself really laughing at these specials. But at the same time, I can't think about these specials without putting a little bit of an asterisk and going, like, there were some things that he said that I found unfunny and potentially damaging, and I've been like, so I'll just come out with it. He said in both specials, for some reason, he brings up trans people, and he talks about the trans community in a way that I think is unsympathetic, and in the second special, I think really hurtful. I feel like he said some really hurtful things. So in the first special, I'm saying first special and second special. So when I say first special, I'm referring to the LA special because that's the one I personally watched first. And then I call the Texas special the second special because that's the one that I watched second. And so I'll just put that here, drop that here as a little code.
And that's how they're presented actually on Netflix.
Yeah. So in the LA special, he does a bit about how like he feels like the trans community is being like coddled, and he does a bit that like gangsters, like African American men that he refers to as gangsters are putting on heels and pretending to be trans women to feel safe, that it is safer to be a trans woman than it is to be a black man. And, I cannot speak to the black experience at all, but I do know that the most dangerous person it is to be, particularly as an African American person, is to be a trans person. Trans people are being openly beaten and killed by unsympathetic people. And to me, I feel like I just feel like to say that it is safer to be a trans woman than a black man is just plain not true. Maybe in some communities, but trans people are the people most likely to be killed, not only by others, but also by their own hand, because they are so maligned and misunderstood. In the LGBT community, they are the people who are most likely to commit suicide, just because it is so terribly misunderstood, and people perceive it as this choice that somebody is making, when nobody would choose that. Like the way that trans people are treated nowadays, where they're being told, they're being told they're not who they feel that they are. They feel very strongly that they're one way, and they're just not. And people are just utterly, people can't get it. And so to me, like, I felt like that was like just a misstatement of the truth. And then in the second special, it got even worse, where I thought it got to the level of, and he's throwing around words saying like I'm an ally. He uses the word I'm an ally. And that people should be able to do whatever they want, was his attitude. But at the same time, he tells the story where he's at like an art gala, I think, like a party, and there is a trans woman who he refers to as a man in a dress, which is different because there are men in dresses. Like, you can be a man and make the fashion choice of wearing a dress. So I'm like, what does he mean by a man in a dress? But it's clear that he means a trans woman. And there's a trans woman who is having some kind of episode, like she's either, he says that maybe she's taken a bad drug or maybe she's too drunk, but she's having a problem, and there's a group of friends trying to help him, and apparently help her. Oh my God, I'm the worst. And apparently Dave Chapelle goes over there and goes like, hey, is he okay? And they go and they correct him and say, she. And he essentially says, well, I'm not going to change my pronoun game for trans people. And I just think that is a fucking mean thing to say. And that's not something that an ally would say. And I know that like the LGBT thing is like, for some reason, something that touches my heart very closely. And it could be because I have, gay friends, and I have someone who's not close, but who is in my life, who is currently transitioning, and I see that struggle. And I've also, things like, This American Life, where I hear stories of people with, incongruous gender identity and things like that. And for some reason it just touches my heart. Like the idea that like, a struggle that like I can identify with the struggle that starts on the inside and then maligned on the outside. Where I feel like Dave Chapelle does a lot about, like, he is known for pushing up against boundaries, and he talks very openly about other very, pertinent subjects. He talks a lot about race, and there's a lot about race in these specials. He also, talks about other hot button issues. He talks about a lot about Bill Cosby and about rape, and those are other issues where other people are going like, well, you can't joke about that. But for me, I feel like right now you can't joke about trans people because they're going through such a struggle right now that there is no way that talking about trans people when you're a cisgendered person is not punching down.
Well, I also think in the specials, especially in the Heart of Texas one, his point of view,
it's not a modern point of view.
It's not a modern point of view. He feels like he has been away for a while.
Yeah,
and he's been out of touch with the culture. And it shows in the special. And I agree, it is incredibly funny at times. And I mean, the wash of nostalgia that occurred during the Los Angeles special, the way Chapelle tells a joke, his ability to use his facial expressions as a punchline, use his entire body for performance is something that I do not see with so many contemporary stand-ups. And I missed that Chapelle. So much of this show, I was dying of laughter. I really loved
me
it.
too.
But
I think he's incredibly smart. It's an incredibly smart special.
When he would talk about, LGBTQT, and then he'd be like, "Well, what the hell is the Q?"
Oh my God, how old is that fucking joke? By the way,
right? And it just it put him in a place where at one time I thought he was an ally and understood. The oppressed experience, because obviously he has experienced it himself from a different perspective, that he was not able to put his own experiences through the filter of the contemporary experience.
The joke that sucking dicks is gross is not funny anymore. The joke that I would never suck a dick is played out, and he's trying to find some new fresh takes on it, but there's just not a fresh take on that perspective. And I like, there's been a couple of things since then where I've been able to kind of get past my hurt. And I'm going to continue to say that I'm a fan of Dave Chapelle, and I'm going to continue to say that I was a fan of those specials. But I'm not going to not mention that I think that he's intolerant of transgender people, and that needs to change.
And again, for me, I'm not saying that you're not allowed to joke about tough subject matter. I'm not saying that.
But I mean, he's open to criticism. Anybody who says anything that's public is open to criticism, and I think that I feel the need to criticize that publicly.
I felt at times in his special, it was like walking in to your parents' old-timey ways. And it shocked me. It surprised me, and it disappointed me.
But there were a couple of things that I've listened to since then that have kind of put that in perspective. For example, Sarah Silverman was just on Pete Holmes' podcast, You Made It Weird. And she talked about, and completely unrelated to the Dave Chapelle special, she brought up how she would use the word gay as like a stand-in for weak or effeminate, like, or something that's being not good, this was not her example, but the dishwasher doesn't work. Oh, the dishwasher's gay. You know what I mean? And like I used to do that. For some reason that was like a thing that we would say, and we wouldn't even think about it.
In the 90s, that was like the thing part of the slang.
It's the thing that you fucking said. And in retrospect, you're just like, wow, I was a shitty person. But in her first special, she does a whole bit about how like, I'm never giving up the word gay. I'm from Boston and I'm going to say gay. And now she goes back and she listens to that and she goes, I cannot believe that I said that. You know, she's still proud of that special, but you know, every special is just that snapshot of you in time. And, you know, you can't really change it. All you can say is I'm different now. And then also another special came out, Mike Birbiglia's most recent special that we actually saw I think we saw it at the Warner Theater, Thank God for Jokes, about Massachusetts. Do you remember that?
Yeah, sure.
Mike Birbiglia did a whole special about how, you know, jokes exist to change your life and to change your perspective, and that jokes by their very nature need to be offensive in some way, you know, even if it's just, you know, because it has to have that element of surprise. So I think that like the thing that concerns me the most is people, like, for example, he went way more out there and more offensive with what he said about trans people in Texas than he did about trans people in LA. And I think that it is because the people in Texas are going to be more conducive to negative things about LGBT people, because they are more our people in Texas are not going to be as tolerant of you know,
as
open-minded as the people in LA, because the people in LA are, you know, walking amongst LGBT people every day.
And it is interesting when you're watching those two specials and you pay attention to the crowd of LA. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
there's definitely some people in the crowd who are loving it, and some people who are...
there's a woman in the front row in LA who obviously leaves at some point in the special, because she's there looking annoyed and then she's gone. You know what I mean? So people, like, he's offending people, and that is why he is there.
Well, I want to talk about that for a second. So I feel like with the LA show, that was edited from a bunch of more than one.
I mean, but that's how it's always done.
Because those people that are, for me, I notice more on the right hand side. Those four people closest to him at the very end, it would change.
Yeah,
like
but that's how it's always done.
The difference is that woman who leaves, the dude next to her stays.
It's still there.
Oh, okay.
It's still there. So, like, you know, I forgot where I was going with that.
But, you know, it's the idea of...
Oh, no, this is the thing that I'm scared of, is, you know, people watching that going, like, oh, well, that's how I feel about trans people. So if Dave Chapelle feels that way about trans people, then I guess it's okay that I feel that way about trans people. But I guess that's the dangerous thing with any thought, with any idea, and you know, minds change, and I think that the landscape is changing, and maybe the landscape is changing a little bit faster than Dave Chapelle.
Well, and if you look at the critical response to those two
and
specials,
I'm not the only person who was offended by that. And so yeah, like I said, I mean, I found the Bill Cosby rape stuff so funny. And I mean, I really did. And the way that paid off in the end just really made me, it just really pleased me. Yeah. It pleased me. But you know, I just don't want people to think that, to us, like, as a fan of stand-up, I don't want to be associated with negative ideas. I want stand-up to be a place of love and open-mindedness and acceptance. And I've pretty much, like, you know, weeded who I listen to and who I enjoy to like-minded people. And I find my world view being shaped by these comedians that I love all of the time. Yeah. And so, you know, I think that Dave Chapelle can change.
I think he is a very smart person. He's a smart comedian. Dave Chapelle is a very smart person. I mean, if you listen to him talk and speak about himself, where he came from, world issues, things that are going on, if you listen to any of his jokes, you have to be a very keen observer to be able to pull from your culture to fashion your routine from.
Right.
And so I think he is an intelligent individual, and I don't feel like he is above evolving.
Right.
If you just look at his stand up and his career, he's evolved, and I think that he still has a ways to go, as do we all, and so I do see him growing and learning.
Yeah, and I do see where he's coming from with the hurt of we don't have race fixed in our country. Black people are being abused and killed in the streets. That this is not resolved yet, but now we're worried about a man in a dress. I can understand that hurt, and I think that that's where that bit is coming from. This is how are we moving to priority, GHI when we are not done with A yet. And I see where that hurt is coming from, but at the same time,
that's where it's coming from.
But at the same time, like we just have to take care of it all now. We have to treat all hate, all intolerance, all maligned people, and we have to fix it all at the same fucking time, because people are dying. People are dying. Men are being shot in the street. Children are killing themselves. Children and teenagers are killing themselves. So like we can't. No life is at the bottom of the priority list when it comes to hate. No life.
Yeah.
I didn't want to talk about this because I knew I would cry.
No, but I wanted you to talk about it because people need to hear it.
They do. I also saw 2001: A Space Odyssey.
It was all right.
I didn't fall asleep. I stayed awake the whole time.
So
my
this was your
husband
third
was
attempt?
very proud. Yes, this was my third attempt to watch. Not attempt. The problem with 2001: A Space Odyssey is everybody thinks like this is a great midnight movie. Let's watch 2001: A Space Odyssey at midnight, and we know that, or a 10 o'clock movie, and we know that I cannot stay awake at a movie that starts after 9.
Yeah.
So for a long time, I felt like 2000, like for me, up until when did we see this on Wednesday?
Monday.
Monday night. Up until this past Monday, 2001: A Space Odyssey was a movie that was 70% about monkeys for me.
I mean, you've seen the Moonwatcher sequence at least
So
4
many
times in the theater.
I can actually pinpoint when I fall asleep each and every time, because we've got the fucking monkey evolution sequence.
Yeah.
And then we have the guy at the airport. And
Dr. Poole.
Dr. Poole.
Yeah.
And then I fall asleep.
No, sorry, Dr. Floyd.
I don't know. I didn't bring up the IMDb.
I've got it. It's Dr. Floyd.
I get to Dr. Floyd, and I fall asleep during then, because I hadn't even seen the shot where the flight attendant is like walking in the circle. I had never seen that. I'm like, this is new.
Yeah.
And so that's like a third of the way into the movie, not even. Yeah. And then I've woken up during the Daisy part, and then I've never seen the end. Like going into Beyond the Infinite, never seen that. I looked at the poster, like the poster outside the theater was like that fetus face.
The Star Child, Lisa. The ultimate trip.
The Star Child. And I was just like, there are fucking fetuses in this movie.
That was literally her sentence as we walked in. I was like, what?
I had literally never seen it.
So now having seen the complete film, what did you take from it?
I found it really interesting.
Yeah.
My way in for this film was like, I was like, well, I am just going to get into this music. I was like, I'm going to enjoy the music because I get so accustomed to actively watching a movie for story. Mm-hmm. And there is so much of this movie that's not so much about the story, but about the idea and about the visual and the marriage of the visual with this classical music.
It's practically a silent film at times.
Yeah. So I just said to myself, okay, I'm just going to get into this music and really enjoy it, and that kept me engaged. Also, I think that the pot of coffee I drank was also very instrumental.
And we did not order our cookies until we were introduced to Dave and Frank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Hal, of course.
Yeah, so I really enjoyed it. I would love to do a 2001 cast at some point.
So do you see what the big deal is about?
Oh,
the film?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And just from an effects standpoint, what they were able to do 1 year after Head, right? It's 1969?
It's 68. No, it's 68.
1 year after Head, right? Or the same year?
No, yeah, I think they're both the same year.
Same year. Same year as Head. My favorite movie. You can see the cross influence all over the place. Cross-pollination. But what they were able to do with practical effects was just absolutely astounding.
There was a woman next to us who leaned to her friend and she's like, is there no CG in this film?
Wow.
It's magical. Yeah. Well, if you think about the guy jogging on the wall in a circle, I'm just like part of me is like trying to figure out what is the magic trick? Where is the video cut so that he can run in this circle? It's amazing. It's amazing.
It's interesting. There are, there's four segments to the movie. There's, the Dawn of Man, Moonwatcher, the Monolith, teaching him how to take a bone and turn it into a tool, a weapon. And then there's the scene with Floyd going up to the moon where they've dug up a monolith that's been buried there for God knows how long. And then there's the mission, the Jupiter mission. And, when you get to Frank and Dave, it becomes like a different movie. Suddenly you have these two pilots who, they don't even know why they're going. They haven't
this
even
is
told
also
the
when
mission.
the music stops.
And yeah, the music, it becomes less about, the marvel of the exploration.
It gets very quiet.
And it becomes this really intense thriller of this man versus their creation, right? And then, Dave fixes the Hal situation and it returns to the metaphysical. It returns to the philosophical and the wonderment and terror of exploration and reaching beyond your knowledge and the importance of reaching beyond their knowledge and evolution and all that stuff. And, so I was talking to one of the servers before the film started, and he was just saying, like, I just don't get what the big deal of this movie is. It's so long and boring and dull and nobody says anything. And, the older I get, because I was certainly in my 20s, I was with him. I did not understand the appeal of 2001. But the older I get and the more I watch this film and you connect with Kubrick's fascination and appreciation for man and exploration, it does tap into that, like, that positive energy that I feel when I watch a Star Trek episode. But 2001 also has, this idea that should we have gone here? Should we have created Hal?
Yeah.
Should we have picked up that bone? Was that a good thing?
Yeah.
And I think ultimately at the end of the day, when Dave turns into the Star Child after he's gone beyond the infinite, which is just such an amazing scene on the big screen. This is my 6th watch on a big screen. And every time I am in awe of this 11-minute sequence where you're just going to be visually assaulted, orally assaulted by this passageway, by his unwilling evolution. It is thrilling. It is like the most cinematic event you could experience. Nothing has come close to matching what is happening in the climax or the transition into the third act of 2001.
Think about that sequence, and you probably already have, but think about that sequence. You said 1968, right? the creation, the conception of that sequence and the execution of it in contrast to our tools available to us in filmmaking and Christopher Nolan's sequence of Matthew McConaughey going into that black hole.
Yeah, it's nothing. It
becomes way more impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Yeah, right. And so much about 2001 is the commitment and saying, look, this is my story, and you can watch it, and you can love it, or you can just leave.
Yeah.
Because this is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And that's what I want from my filmmakers. That's what I want out of my visionaries. I want to go on their trip.
I think that the thing that keeps people coming back to 2001: A Space Odyssey, besides just the stunning visuals, it's become so iconic. You know, the
bum 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 bum.
Thus, also sprach Zarathustra. Is the fact that every piece of it is extremely considered. There is nothing thoughtless about this film. Like, I don't know. I guess because I fell asleep through it twice before. But I always thought that it was way more, like, even with I thought it was way more trippy than it was. There is a story there. The monolith is more than just, it is a metaphor, but it is more than just a metaphor. It is an active part of this story. And the music is an active part of the story. It's part of telling the story.
I mean, the music is, the reason he picks classical pieces is he's celebrating humanity, right? You're watching this slow travel from the Pan Am rocket to the space station, and then from the space station pod to the moon base. He's taking his time because he's saying, look what we've fucking done. This is crazy.
And it's
we're
also,
on the moon.
It's all about organization. Like what we do, we're just organizing ourselves into greatness, you know, like putting one foot in front of the other. Like all music is putting one note in front of the other, and then all of a sudden what you have. I don't know.
And, 2001 is a film that you do not get the same experience when you watch it at home. Whether your home television is 70 inches or 30 inches. You need to be locked in and engaged with this movie. And if you go in going like, show me what you got, classic movie, AFI Top 100.
Yeah.
That's not how you experience it. Right. You're going in biased. You just need to say, I'm watching a movie. What does this movie have to tell me? Let's have a conversation. And you have to have that conversation in the dark, and you have to have that conversation internally. Yeah. You have to have it without a phone, without your neighbor talking to you.
Right.
You have to commit to it.
Yeah.
And I love movies that demand your attention.
We don't get a lot of science fiction films like that. We don't even get a lot of films like that, let alone. But we don't get a lot of science fiction films like that.
It does happen. I
we don't get a lot of them.
Certainly, I agree. I don't mean to take this point and say like, boy, they sure don't make movies like that like they used to, and it's the death of cinema. Obviously, if you've listened to this podcast before, we don't believe that. Right. Every year we find 25 movies that we deeply, deeply love and can celebrate. But there is something about Kubrick, and there's something about 2001.
I do know what I think it is. Like, I think that, like, we do have, I feel like the idea of human endeavor, and when you take human endeavor and you take it to its logical extension, what does that do to humanity? I think that we see that idea in science fiction all of the time, but for us, for modern day films that have that thesis statement, stop at how. They stop at our human endeavor is going to end in our destruction. Mm-hmm. And I think that 2001: A Space Odyssey ends on hope. Like, if you take human evolution and human progress to its logical extension, the result is going beyond the infinite and merging with something greater than ourselves.
Yeah, agreed. I also think the finances are different now, right? People would show up to 2001: A Space Odyssey because it was a movie that showed you things that had never been seen before on the big screen, right? And now we're in a world where, every half-assed Sci-Fi Channel movie on television will attempt to show you something you've never seen. Here's a bunch of sharks and tornadoes mixed together with some chainsaws. Yeah. And I've never seen that before, and I can do it with a few clickety-clacks on my laptop. Yeah. And so that idea that we'll show up, we'll bring our dollars and our asses to an event that is purely visual is gone.
Yeah.
Right. So
the movies that are successful now, the Transformers Age of Extinctions of this world, the Fast and the Furiouses, they are showing you, they are getting bigger and crazier and wilder, but they are not necessarily because we can do it easier. We can't use the spectacle as a tool for thought.
I was going to say, but what are they saying?
Exactly. They're not getting any smarter.
So, like, 2001 tricked a bunch of people to coming into the movies with like the visuals, right? And that led to Star Wars, and that led to Transformers: Age of Extinction. But it lured 1968 audiences to the theater, and then it said, well, now think about it, and the conversations were had, and people were floored by it, and continue to be floored by it if you're willing.
I was going to say that's what I mean by like the film. It was a landmark film. It garnered and warranted discussion after the fact, even years after the fact. Up until this point, there were other films that were inspired by the ideals presented in the film. It was spectacle, but again, it was thought-provoking and it was saying something. And so, again, what I mean is Avatar, as popular as it was, has not done that. We haven't had a film, even the new Star Wars film.
Well, so this is what I'm saying, though. The difference is that back then you got away with a thinking man's movie because you had spectacle, and the spectacle brought people in.
Right.
That's missing now. However, there are lots of films being made that will continue to inspire conversation for decades, that are being made right now, that have been made last year. There are movies that are going to inspire tons and tons of people that they watch them, but they're not going to make billions of dollars.
Yeah.
Because the movies that are making billions of dollars, they're not bringing people. People don't want to see 2001. People don't want 2001 out of their movies anymore.
Yeah.
I don't think they wanted it back then. They just went because holy shit, look at that monolith.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I'm talking in circles here.
No, I understand.
But I don't want to sound pessimistic.
Is that I feel like I deserve a certificate or something for staying awake through that movie.
You get a high five.
Oh, yeah. That was not we need to high five on mic. Yeah.
Good job. All right. What else you got?
No, that was my week. I've talked for 9.5 hours.
All right.
We are an hour into the podcast.
Yeah, you're welcome, people.
Finally, Brad, how was your weekend, Dork? You got 30 seconds.
No.
Go.
I had a pretty good weekend, Dork.
Yeah.
I saw 2001. I want to talk about it.
Yep.
I spent a lot of time on Netflix this week. A few things dropped. The Discovery, a new film from Charlie McDowell. He did, The One I Love. I don't know if you ever saw that with Elizabeth Moss. It's an interesting side science fiction movie. The Discovery stars Jason Segel, Rooney Mara, and Robert Redford.
Yes.
And, the basic plot is that Robert Redford scientifically proves that there is an afterlife.
Yeah.
And in proving that there is an afterlife, the suicide rate across the world increases because people are not happy where they are. They go, hey, I know there's an afterlife. Let me hit the do-over button and jump off this bridge.
Yikes.
And it opens with Robert Redford. He's being interviewed by Mary Steenburgen, and she's asking him the tough questions. Do you feel guilty about this scientific discovery? And he's being very much the scientist. And then her cameraman stands up, says, thank you, and shoots himself in the face. And movie starts. And cut to Jason Segel. He meets Rooney Mara on a... not a barge. What do you call it?
Ferry.
A ferry. Thank you. I was like, a raft? That's not the right word. Meets Rooney Mara on a ferry. They're going to this island, and they strike up a conversation. He turns off the television. He turns off that interview because he just doesn't want to see it. They strike up a philosophical conversation. And I would say that there are a lot of thoughts in this movie. There's a lot of content. There's a lot to talk about, like there is in 2001, Darren. But just... now you got to go to Netflix to watch it.
Yeah.
And what you learn is that Jason Segel's the son of Robert Redford, and he's not so sure that his dad has actually discovered the afterlife.
Yeah.
And he is really concerned and bothered by what has happened in its wake of scientific discovery.
Yeah.
Rooney Mara, has disconnected from the world. She's sick of it all, and she is going to go drown herself. And Segel stops her, and Segel takes her back to his dad's mansion. And his dad and his brother's Jesse Plemons from Breaking Bad, your favorite. He's got a beard though, and a little floppy hair. Yeah. I like Jesse Plemons. I don't know what your problem is.
Isn't that like the last place you want to take a suicidal woman? Well, especially when you don't.
So this is the interesting thing. He goes and he has this massive estate, and his dad has collected all manner of people around him who are helping him out. Raking the leaves, mowing the lawn, cooking dinner, stealing corpses for his experiments. Some real mad scientist shit is happening up in this mansion.
Yeah,
and. Really, why? You're right. Why would he take this woman here? Because he basically just wants to keep an eye on her because he does not want her to kill herself.
Yeah.
And they start to explore the concept of this discovery, and maybe it's not what you thought it was. And it goes into some really interesting sci-fi kookiness that I was incredibly compelled by. And I thought Jason Segel was really good.
I was going to say, was he?
Yeah, to me, he was always, he's the guy from the Muppet movie, and he's the guy from How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah.
But after the end of the tour, which we saw at Lost Weekend,
that's right,
5, 6, one of those.
Yeah.
I was like, I really loved his performance as David Foster Wallace.
So he's a straight man in this one.
He is, and he is very quiet, reserved, eye-rolly at times.
Yeah.
He's rolling his eyes. I'm not eye-rolling at him.
Yeah.
But I thought he was an interesting foil to Robert Redford, and I liked his chemistry with Rooney Mara, who is also very mellow. You have two really mellow people that when I heard the casting, I thought, this is just not going to work for me. That sounds like I could fall asleep really quickly.
Yeah.
And some people have accused the discovery of being, I hate the phrase, a slow burn. Because it's not a slow burn. It's not The Innkeepers, okay?
Yeah.
But it is a thoughtful movie. It is a mannered film. It is a paced movie, a meticulously paced movie that gets crazy.
Not unlike 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Not unlike 2001: A Space Odyssey.
They're the same.
That's right. And Lisa and I were also doing our MCU rewatch.
Oh yeah.
And Robert Redford, in Captain America: The Winter Soldier, I love him so much in that movie.
Yeah.
And he is great in The Discovery.
Yeah. He's not slumming it.
No, there's something about him as a haggard old man. Now that he's becoming a little leather-faced,
He's still handsome, though.
He's handsome. And maybe it's just I have a thing for old dudes. We all know that's true. But I never really liked Jeremiah Johnson or Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid era Robert Redford.
Yeah.
But maybe I need to revisit that because I also just rewatched All the President's Men, and that movie is awesome, and he is great in that movie too. So maybe I've just been wrong about Robert Redford this entire time. That's probably the accurate opinion that Brad's been wrong first time. But I really dug The Discovery.
Yeah.
The crazy thing is, The Discovery premiered at Sundance in January.
This year?
This year, in 2017. And Netflix buys it and drops it. Boom, done. Netflix original movie. They just did the same thing for Macon Blair's movie, I Don't Feel at Home in the World, in this world anymore. Yeah. And that was another really quirky, strange, slick little flick that that won the Grand Jury Prize at Sundance in January.
Yeah.
And then that dropped a month ago. And I think these movies, if they had played in theaters, but there would have been a conversation, and they would get the attention that I feel like they deserve.
How many tickets do you think those would have sold? Honestly, though,
the same amount of tickets that Blue Ruin would have sold, or Green Room.
But how many tickets did Green Room sell? And it was in theaters.
It sold enough to make its budget back, maybe. I don't know.
But Netflix buying that film probably was enough to give.
It theoretically puts it in front of more eyes than it would have.
Yeah.
And I don't want to become the pessimistic asshole, but it does bum me out when we're talking about 2001: A Space Odyssey, or we're talking about S-Town, or we're talking about Luke Cage or Iron Fist. Right now, the conversations around entertainment is very brief. You have maybe a week to talk about these things before no one cares anymore.
But you just said it though. Like people don't want to go. People didn't want to go see 2001 in the theaters, and people don't want to go see that from their movies now. And so, The Discovery ain't even 2001 because. And I got your point, and I'm just saying like that's kind of probably why those movies don't. And Green Room absolutely should be experienced in a theater. That was one of my favorite theatrical experiences of last year, watching that, sitting next to Lisa just being destroyed. But
the truth is, I think all movies belong in the theater.
Absolutely. I would prefer to see every movie in a movie theater. But I think that's kind of our fault as an audience that we don't get every movie in a movie theater because there are some people who don't want to see 2001 in a theater.
I think that the answer to this is places like the Alamo,
Absolutely.
is places like the Angelica,
Yep.
where they are destination theaters. And what I'm hoping is that
and film clubs,
yeah.
where there's just more of an active film community who's demanding to see these things in a theater environment.
Yeah. And I recognize I should not be the old man on his porch screaming at the kids to get off his lawn, and that change is necessary and change is good, and it is really rad that I can just watch The Discovery whenever I want, thanks to my Netflix subscription. But I'm a person who relishes the build to Batman v Superman. I am the person who relishes the build to Hail Caesar. Watching the trailers, reading the early reviews, going to see it, talking with my coworkers. Mm-hmm. And when a film like The Discovery comes out on Netflix, it becomes my job to find people to have that conversation. Maybe that's a good thing.
But maybe it'll result in people going on Netflix and watching these weird independent films and going like, "Oh, I'm now interested in weird independent films. Where can I watch these on the big screen?" More eyes can always be better.
I've been seeing that on social media that some people were, "Hey, I found this on Netflix. Thanks for turning me on to this. I didn't know." So I think that's the plus. But I do get, and I agree with what you're saying in that particular sentiment, Brad.
I mean, really, it's it feels weird to see the world change away from your likes.
Well, get used to it, dude. We are getting old.
No.
And it's because, you know, I look back and think about right now we're in the MP3 age, and before I was into record collecting or whatever,
MP3's old, man.
Vinyls used to
MP3's dead.
Yeah, vinyls used to be the thing, and then it transitioned to CDs, and I barely remember being cognitive of that happening. But in the case of film, because I'm so immersed in that culture, seeing the distribution methods and avenues of actually watching these things, seeing that change and be cognitive of it happening, I do think that it's a strange thing to be bear witness to, and to see how that affects not only the people around you, but how it affects how I consume these things. It really is. I'm not gonna say it's hard to do, but it ain't easy either.
I like with that. I fear losing things, like you know, an album that I bought on cassette, and then I start listening to CDs, so I stop listening to that album because I forget about it. And then the same when I moved to MP3s. Well, I bought this on CD, but now I'm moved on to MP3, and I never think about it anymore.
That's where we're different, Lisa. I have like 9 versions of Jaws.
I know. Well, you know,
I've got the beta. I've got the VHS. I've got the recorded off TV cut. I've got the DVD. I've got the special edition DVD. I've got the anniversary DVD. I've got the Blu-ray. I've got the anniversary Blu-ray.
Yeah.
I promise you there are things that you had only on VHS, and they're just like this blank in your memory. And one day, they're going to be excavating your basement years in the future. The apes are, when this is now a Planet of Apes. And they're going to pull out your VHS copy of Drop-In Obscure.
Zapped! Scott Baio Classic!
Yay!
Not on DVD.
Then they're going to be like, clearly this was his favorite movie of all time.
No.
And you forgot about it altogether.
I fear the move away from physical media. Like, that's...
when you just don't have a shelf anymore and all your walls are just smooth.
Or everything that's on my shelf, that's it. There will be no new additions to that. The whole advent of streaming and now 4K streaming and moving away from actual physical media, like I fear that. Like, I don't want to not be able to buy a movie.
But here's the truth, Darren.
Physically.
The hipsters are going to keep it alive for you,
I
right?
hope so.
Vinyl is back, baby.
It is. And that I loved it, and I'm grateful for that.
And it'll become more expensive, probably.
Okay.
4K Blu-rays. If you want to still watch a physical copy of Mad Max Fury Road, it's going to cost you $100 a disc.
But you know what?
Like it used to on VHS.
No, but and for the things that I cherish the most, like I wouldn't mind paying for it. But as you said, like things change, we have to change with it. But that is one area where I agree with you, and I fear, and it doesn't sit well with me thinking about the possibility of not being able to add something to my
And
shelf.
10 years from now, when we want to go browse a store, the only store we'll get to browse is the ABC shop.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we now go to the grocery store. We're just looking at things in the grocery store.
I'm not going to lie. When I get bored, I go to the ABC store and I look at the bottles.
It's right across the street.
I'm like, oh, look at this label.
A shelf.
Brad likes to shop. He's a shopper.
I like to browse things.
I agree. All right. What else you got?
Well, still sucking on the Netflix teat.
Yeah.
5 came back, just dropped on there. 3 episodes, just over 3 hours long. It's the Steven Spielberg produced, based on Mark Harris's book about George Stevens, John Ford, John Huston, Frank Capra, and William Wyler. When World War II hit, these 5 well-established filmmakers went overseas, joined the Army, the Navy, and they became propaganda machines for America. And this, if you're interested in World War II history, it's essential. If you're interested in Hollywood history, this is just catnip. It's so great.
Yeah.
It's really great. John Ford went over. He joined up with the Navy And he commanded hundreds of dudes to make these movies. He shot the Battle of Midway. He made a documentary around that film. He won the Academy Award for that movie. That Academy Award, by the way, you can go to downtown D.C. to the International Spy Museum, and you can go stare at John Ford's Academy Award for the Battle of Midway.
It's in the Spy Museum?
It's in the Spy Museum. It's in a hallway at the end, just in this one tiny cylinder of glass. You're like, shit, that's John Ford's Oscar. That's rad.
Wow.
You can also see Dr. Zaius' makeup from Planet of the Apes that Dick Smith did, because Dick Smith is the guy who did all the makeup for the Argo spy mission. The real life event that Argo's about. Yeah, Dick Smith, who did Planet of the Apes makeup, did the makeup for that guy.
Oh, shit.
Anyway, so Spy Museum got some things relevant to your movie dork interests.
Yeah.
John Ford did the Battle of Midway. Frank Capra did a series of documentaries called Why We Fight, basically detailing the evil of Nazi Germany and the Axis powers.
Yeah.
George Stevens, he landed in D-Day, and he shot the landing with the guys.
Yeah.
And he survived that, and he shot the Battle of the Bulge stuff, and he was there when they liberated Dachau. And when you're watching all that footage of the Holocaust or of concentration camps, that was all shot by George Stevens. And George Stevens was a guy known for his comedies before World War II.
Yeah.
And he witnesses the Holocaust, and he comes back to Hollywood, and he refuses to be funny. I mean, like, he could never be lighthearted ever again. And all of his films post World War II are somber, dark, painful cinematic experiences. He directed Giant, the James Dean film. He did in 1953 Shane.
Yeah.
He did A Place in the Sun, and then finally he did the first adaptation of A Diary of Anne Frank in 1959. He tells a story about. Well, he doesn't tell the story. They tell a story about George Stevens where, all this footage that he shot at Dachau that they used in the Nuremberg trials, and it was this footage that really cemented the true horror of the final solution, right? If we didn't have cameras there, people in America would not truly understand the horror of the Holocaust.
Right.
And he shot days worth of footage, and he was going to film Diary of Anne Frank, and he wanted to rewatch the footage. So he went to the lot, brought up he put up the first reel, watched 60 seconds of it, couldn't deal with it, locked it up in storage, never to be seen ever again, by himself anyway.
Right.
And this is critical art, the stuff that he did. John Huston, famous for the Maltese Falcon. He was certainly a propaganda machine. He shot the liberation of Paris. But the most interesting thing that you can see of his is By the Light of Day. And it's a 45 documentary film about veterans coming home after World War II, and how some of them are physically injured and some of them are mentally wounded, psychically hurt. And he just interviews soldier after soldier, and these guys are just, they don't even see the camera. They all consented to all this stuff because they just, who gives a shit? I'm back. I can't deal with my life anymore. And the portrayals that he got, the honesty that he got out of these men for this documentary is incredibly eye-opening, especially at that time when PTSD wasn't even a thing,
Right.
right? And it hadn't been labeled or anything.
Yeah.
And when the Army saw this film, they're like, nope, you can't show this to anybody. You cannot see this. And it wasn't finally released to the public until 1981. And by the way, now streaming on Netflix.
Really?
By the light of day. So is the Battle of Midway, Why We Fight, a bunch of those documentaries that Capra did. They're all on Netflix now to coincide with Five Came Back. I've been watching them. By the light of the day, Darren, I think would be a very hard watch, certainly given your own personal experience.
Yeah.
But I also think, like, you know, so many times in the conversation of, you know, from Vietnam forward, like, oh, those World War II guys, they were, you know, the greatest generation. They were men. They didn't have to deal with this shit.
Right.
And that's a lie.
Yeah.
You know, this is not a new thing.
No.
This is not a sign of our new weak age.
Right.
This shit's a reality.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
here's John Huston shooting it, and you know, again, it just showed you the power of the art form that the government was like, nope, you can't do this.
Yeah.
And, you know, it does also, the documentary does go into some of the animated propaganda films, and also just the weird disconnect that occurs in the portrayal of German enemy versus Japanese enemy.
Yeah.
You know, because the German villain is still portrayed pretty much like a human being, except maybe Hitler. Hitler's very cartoonish and monstrous. But then, like, the Japanese people, the way we put them on film, the way we animated them, the caricature, it's really ugly.
Yeah.
And I get it, we're at war, but I mean, it goes into some really heinous, dark depths of just how jingoistic and racist our society was at that time.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we all know these stories. We know the stories of the Japanese internment during World War II. But I'd recommend anybody watch this stuff just to see, rather than just hear about, to know,
Right.
to actually bear witness to what we did to the Japanese people, even at that time of war. Five Came Back, you know, it's a real quick 3 hours. It's broken up into 3 parts, but it does feel like a whole film. There are interviews with Spielberg, Guillermo del Toro, Francis Ford Coppola, Paul Greengrass.
Oh, wow.
And it's just, you know, just when you think that there's not another angle that you could possibly have on World War II, this film explored something new for me.
Yeah.
And thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you, Netflix, for having it there for everybody to watch. Yeah, I really, really, really liked it.
I'm gonna end up checking it out.
Yeah.
I can't say when, but I am interested in it's, you know, particularly like what you said as far as the view of man today and the soldiering today and the experiences from our modern conflicts, as opposed to the soldiers from World War I, World War II, and how, you know, they're seen as being built different, but having personal experiences, but then to see how they connect with some, you know, soldiers from a different era and seeing similarities.
Yeah, it's and again, how the other aspect of it is, how do we use propaganda? You know, you're hired to make rah films, right? To justify why we're there, to soothe the soldier that has been enlisted.
Yeah.
And, you know, how Frank Capra approached propaganda versus how William Wyler approached propaganda.
Right.
And William Wyler, he's the guy who shot the Memphis Belle. He's the one who turned that into the iconic story that it is.
Right.
And you know, I never knew this, but after he did that film on the Memphis Belle, he was also going to do a documentary about another plane. I want to say it was the Thunderbolt. That's probably wrong. But when he went up in this plane, he wanted to get shots of the Italian coast. And he's up there all day. And I guess he's not wearing his ear protectors because he had experienced the Memphis Belle B-52 bomber.
Right.
And he thought he knew, how loud that thing was going to be.
Right.
When he goes up in this Thunderbolt, he comes down and he can't hear. And he's like, oh, I can't, it'll come back.
Yeah.
Well, he sees a doctor and, no, permanent hearing loss. Shit. He lost his hearing. He later in life, doctors were able to give him relief where he could eventually hear a little bit.
Yeah.
But he came back to Hollywood to make movies, and he was a deaf man.
Damn.
And that was a really interesting and bit of Hollywood history I'd never heard before.
Damn.
So yeah, I don't know. All those men, very different human beings, approached the war in different ways and approached their jobs in very different ways. And they had to come back to Hollywood and make their films. And Frank Capra made "It's a Wonderful Life" after World War II.
Yeah.
And just seeing how when you watch "It's a Wonderful Life," it's a film that I've never really appreciated, and I have not gone back to watch it since watching Five came back.
Right.
I'm curious to do so. It's a film I've never really liked, but the way that this documentary shows how the war affected the scripting and the production of that movie, and how and what bits of World War II are actually in "It's a Wonderful Life," gave me a new appreciation to it intellectually. So I'm curious to go back and check that film out.
Yeah. That's just, speaking coming from a modern context, and again, being a service member, just the idea that was a thing to have guys go over, shoot the idea of the propaganda film and to win hearts and minds and just the idea of that. Like, I try to put that, think about doing some shit like that now. Like, it's just...
Well, so, Why We Fight, the Frank Capra stuff,
yeah,
that was made so that soldiers who were potentially going to get homesick, they're like, all right, we've just done this massive draft. We're bringing everybody in, and obviously, the world is on the brink of destruction.
Yeah.
But we need to show these guys that what they're doing is super important.
Yeah.
And so Capra, help us tell these guys what they're doing is necessary.
Yeah.
And that's what Why We Fight is.
Again, that's just... I just picture myself, sitting in a tent in Kuwait, just waiting to go... get on the plane to get to, Iraq or Afghanistan, and then putting on a friggin' propaganda film like that. This is why you're over here. This is why you're sucking out here in 125-degree heat. Like, that's just so weird to me that was a thing. Like, that's fucking nuts. Yeah.
And then you had other guys who were making buy war bonds.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. It's a great
I'm gonna check it out. All right. What else you got?
I mean, that was pretty much it for my Weekend Dork. Velvet just came out in hardcover. Ed Brubaker and Steve
sexy.
Epting. We've talked about it several times about 2 years ago on this podcast.
Yep.
And now it's all collected, and I highly, highly recommend it. If you like James Bond, but you're tired of his chauvinistic, pig-headed ways, Velvet is the book for you. It's the quick and easy and cheap and not 100% accurate description is basically Moneypenny loses James Bond and goes out for her revenge. And I don't like the way that is being used to sell the book, because it's so much more than that. Velvet's such an interesting character.
Yeah.
And Steve Epting's art is just beautiful, but it is great spy craft. It's awesome. I highly recommend it.
All right. See, for my Weekend Dork, I also caught the Dave Chapelle specials. I took C to see Baby Boss. Was it Baby Boss or Boss Baby?
Boss
Man,
Baby.
That movie was funny.
I don't believe you.
That movie was funny.
No.
I enjoyed it. That movie was funny. So Sia, so we're watching, and I posted about this. So we're watching it, and Sia's 7 now, and so
the age of reason.
Right. I as I'm quickly learning, and one of the conceits of the story is that Boss Baby is on a mission. The puppies are taking over, and it's going to get to the point where people are going to want puppies more than babies. Babies are becoming less popular if you go by his pie chart.
This sounds actually pretty reasonable.
Yeah, if you go by his pie chart. So puppies are gaining in popularity, so people aren't going to want kids anymore because they'll get puppies instead because they're cuter. Mm-hmm. So he has been sent by the Baby Corporation to make sure that this new 2017 puppy that's about to be unveiled doesn't happen. And if he fails his mission, he's going to get fired. So, like in the third act of the film, the kid and the baby boss end up taking a trip out to Vegas where they're going to have this unveiling convention for this new puppy, and they manage to get out there. They trick some women into getting them into the convention. So at this particular part, Sia's to my left. And out my periphery, I see like movement, and I look over at her, and she's got her hands kind of like if you were to put your hands on your eyebrows to kind of look and shield your eyes from the sun if you're trying to look in the distance. But she's kind of like peering up under her hands, and I'm looking at her, and I'm like, what the hell? And I go, what are you? I said, I wish I said, are you nervous about something? And she just nods her head. And because like this particular scene, it wasn't really anything dramatic happening. I just I was like, okay, all right, whatever. So then when the movie ends and we're leaving out the theater, I asked her, so did you like it? And she goes, yeah. And I go, oh, okay. And I was like, you were nervous, huh? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, why were you covering your eyes? What were you nervous about? And she goes, because I didn't want him to get fired. and that made me laugh so hard because, again, this was, they had to go to Vegas to pull off this whole, they hadn't even gotten to the elaborate third act of, trying to stop the bad guy or whatever. And with this whole Rupert Goldberg like setup, they haven't even got to that part yet. But it made me think that, well, she's thinking ahead. Like, she's already thinking, like, it's possible that, Alec Baldwin, the baby boss, they're not going to pull whatever their plan is. They're not going to pull it off, and he's going to get fired. Like, it just fascinated me that she's processing the drama of the film, a cartoon, like that far ahead to me. And, as a father, as my daughter is growing, because I see her so often, I don't know. It's just hard. Like, I don't notice the new things that she does. I mean, some of them I do, but some of them I don't. Like, I'll be talking to her, and she'll say a word in proper context, and I'm like, when did you learn that? How do you know what that means? She said, when we were putting together Legos the other day, and she's watching an anime at the same time, and I go, just when she's watching, I always ask her questions to make sure she understands what she's watching, and if not, so I can explain it to her. So I go, why is that guy mad? I mean, I know why he's mad. So I go, why is that guy mad? See, why is he upset? And she goes, oh, well, he's just delusional. I'm like, wait, you're 7, what? Like, when are you? I've never heard her say that before. And I go, okay, I'm trying to make sure she's not just saying that because it's a word she heard on TV. So do you even know what that means? And she goes, yeah, it's not. He thinks that, she explained it to me. He thinks something's going to happen, and it's really not going to happen. It's not really the way he expects it. He thinks it is. And it just surprises me. And so, yeah, she had that moment in Boss Baby where she just didn't want him to she was afraid he's going to get fired. They weren't going to pull off their plan at the end. And it just fascinated me and it made me happy that my daughter is maturely processing character. She's paying attention to character work, basically, is what I'm saying. And that, for me as a film goer and as a cinephile and someone who talks and studies and reviews movies and stuff like that, that my daughter already subconsciously is analyzing films and responding to them in this way, in this analytical way. It just makes me smile. I just love that.
Well, it's time for her to watch 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yeah, she needs to meet Star Child. So that happened. I just today, before coming over here, I went to see Your Name, which is an anime that just came out, and surprisingly, it has a pretty wide release, actually. And I didn't know. I didn't even know anything about this film until about maybe a month ago. It's directed by Makoto Shinkai. Makoto happens to be my middle name. That's pretty cool.
What?
And I found myself really enjoying this film. I have this thing where, if you haven't been listening, or if you have been, you know that I've been trying to get Brad into a different frame of mind when it comes to anime. And I've been trying to dispel any preconceived notions and expose him to different types of anime, to show him that not all anime fall into a particular categorized genre or subgenre. Not all of them are about giant robots or big-chested girls or hentai or whatever. And
those are just bonus.
Yeah, I basically want to get him out of any preconceived notions or prejudices or whatever. Interestingly enough, when I first saw the poster for Your Name, I was not interested in it because it looked like a subgenre or a type of anime that just isn't my bag. And so I initially wrote it off. I didn't watch a trailer. I just going by the poster, I felt like it would be something that I wouldn't be interested in. But because I don't get to see anime on the big screen a lot, I decided, you know what? Nothing's really out this week. Colossal isn't getting released around here anywhere.
Boo.
I want to go watch a movie. I want to sit in a movie theater. So let me go see Your Name. And it exceeded my expectations. It was everything that I did not know I wanted from this film. So I'm not going to get too heavy into spoilers, because part of the delight of watching the film was how it surprised me. So basically, it's a body swapping, romance film. So
wait, what now?
So there's a kid in Japan, in a part of Japan. There's a boy, an older teenage boy, and there's another girl in another part of Japan. And in the opening of the film, because of a phenomenon with a comet, he randomly wakes up in her body. She randomly wakes up in his body. They swap bodies at random points. And so it deals with them coming to the realization of, firstly, what's happening. But in your typical movie, it may be, they switch, they stay in each other's bodies, they try to figure out, try to navigate the other person's life, and then they swap back and then deal with the repercussions of what this person did to their lives. And then they figure out how it happened, they stop it, and then happily ever after. Well, this film doesn't do that. Like they start off already, when you first meet the guy and the girl, they're already swapped, switching bodies. So first they deal with realizing what's happening, and then they decide we're going to commute. And because it happened, it doesn't just happen one time. Like in what was the movie with Ryan Reynolds and Jason Sudeikis, The Change Up? It doesn't just happen like one time and remain that way throughout the duration of the film. Like it happens, they switch back and forth like multiple times at random. And so they start to decide to communicate with each other and leave notes. So, Lisa will get into my body, I'll switch into Lisa's body wherever she is. And so to communicate, when Lisa's in my body, she has my phone. She'll open a note app and she'll type what she did, who she, I said this to your boss today, Darren, just to prepare me for when I swap back. So they would leave each other notes to, kind of guide their actions and set up some core rules. Don't do this, don't say that, or whatever. And so when they swap back, that's how they would try to navigate the rest of their day or their week or their lives until they figure out like actually what's going on. So we're basically trying to live with it because they couldn't figure out how it was happening. But through that back and forth and how, they were affecting each other's lives, they began to grow fond of each other. And
of course.
And so something happens and they stop swapping.
Oh, no.
And so they have to figure out
another way to get inside each other's bodies. Am I right?
Yeah. Well, so the kid,
I'm doing a finger I made one finger like a cylinder and one finger
Yeah,
like a stick, and I'm doing some insertion gestures.
So one
this is
hand's
a non-visual.
Yeah.
One hand's a donut, one hand's a hot dog.
Yeah.
So they have to. So the kid, the guy, is trying to figure out a way to actually meet this girl. Actually, both of them try to figure out how to meet each other.
Get it? Meet.
Right, and so
Gross.
Doing the finger gesture.
I don't want. It doesn't. It's not. There's a reveal as to why it's happening and
One
how
of
it's
them has
happening.
tentacles.
No,
Oh.
that I wasn't expecting, and it becomes very heartwarming. There's no sexual aspect to the film,
Boo.
except when the kid first wakes up in the girl's body, he has boobs, and he squeezes his boobs.
Who wouldn't?
The little girl's sister walks in and is like, "What are you doing? Like, why are you squeezing on yourself?" And so every time he would wake up in her body, the kid's sister would walk in there and see her bigger sister like squeezing on her boobs. And I thought that was funny. And he's a teenager.
That is
Look,
funny.
if I woke up in a body and I had tits, I probably would never leave the house. I'm just saying. But that was the only sexual aspect of the film. They never kiss. There's nothing mentioned about wanting to be physical with the other person. So that was a nice departure for me. Like I really bought into them caring, and by them switching bodies so often and having spent so much time in that other person's life, I bought into them feeling for each other because they gained an insight to one another that you don't necessarily get just by dating someone. So when they got to that point where, you know, they wanted to meet, and they don't mention that I want to meet so we can be together and I can be your girlfriend, boyfriend. They just wanted to meet. He just wanted to actually see this person.
They're like bizarre pen pals.
Yes. And so the way that this story unravels, it does so in a way that I wasn't expecting. And it's just a heartwarming film. The characters are all likable. Like, they're not asshole, annoying teenagers. It was just a really good film.
What age group do you think that this is directed at, this film?
You know,
like, I understand it's fun for everybody, but
it could be, I would say, like, teenagers to young adults. But there were, the audience that I was in, it was sold out, was a wide range. You had older folks in there, you had really younger people in there, but I think that it may be geared towards teenagers and to young adults. But they had really interesting side characters and peripheral characters who had nice complex scenes, and they weren't just one notes. They had, they would spend time with the main two characters, but then you would have scenes, like full scenes, that fleshed out her friends or his friends, and I really appreciated that. So she was a more traditional country girl who her and her family were steeped into Japanese tradition. She would actually perform traditional Japanese dance for performances and things like that. So she was steeped in Japanese tradition, and she longed to go out to the city to see what that life is like.
So it's also like a city mouse, country mouse story.
Sort of, yes, but they don't. That's not really the crux of the characters. They don't really go into and expound upon that. That's just a small part of who they are, but it doesn't make up the character and where that story goes. The story really is it's really about them coming to know one another from living in each other's shoes and having a friendship and a bond grow from that. And again, the way that they tie into how they're swapping and how they meet was firstly unexpected, but it was really good and heartwarming. I had a really good time at the movies earlier today watching this film. I can't wait to see it again. The animation in it is just stunning. It is just stunning. The colors are beautiful. We just watched and talked about Ghost in the Shell. We just talked about the visual aspects.
I was supposed to watch that this week. The anime.
So yeah, we talked about that film, the live action film, and we talked about the anime, and we talked about how scenes from the anime are directly translated to live action. But this film, Your Name, there is an attention to cinematography in it that it's just stunning. You have that type of attention and care reserved for some live action films, but the way that cinematography and composition and color is used, the sky, the characters, is just phenomenal. It's beautiful. And so I was all around pleased with this film. I highly recommend you check it out. Tyson's is showing it. There are a bunch of places in Maryland showing it. There are a couple of theaters in the area that are showing it, a lot to be exact. East Street Cinema is showing it. And they have both subtitled and dubbed versions. So if you're not a fan of subtitles and you don't feel like reading, they have screenings. Most theaters are showing both versions, subtitled and dubbed. So I highly recommend you check it out. It's a really good story. And a lot of it's not predicated on a bunch of coincidences. There may be like one or two, but it's not predicated on a bunch of coincidences, like they coincidentally meeting at a certain point or whatever. Again, there may be one or two in there, but most of it is believable. And yeah, I just really enjoyed this film. I highly recommend you, Brad and Lisa, check it out.
It sounds cute, actually.
So yeah, that was my Weekend Dork. Lisa, did you check out? I also watched that. I had to go backtrack and check out the Flash Supergirl crossover.
I have not.
You kind of have to see that.
Oh, man.
I'm not the music dork, but I felt like some of the musical choices were weird, so I need you to watch it to tell me if I'm wrong. And yes, those should have been picked and played and sang in the movie. In the show.
So far behind.
But Grant Gustin, if that's really him,
he can sing.
That motherfucker can sing.
He can sing.
Like, he's good. He can dance, like tap thing. He was tap dancing, like he did the whole La La Land shit. Like, he was really good. I was shocked.
Yeah.
And damn, I'm forgetting my girlfriend's name. Melissa Benoist. She was good. And so I was shocked at how good of performers they were. So really, the story is this weird music meister comes.
Yep. Right, of course.
They stole this plot, obviously, from the comic, but also Batman the Brave and Bold cartoon did this with Neil Patrick Harris voicing the music meister.
And it was amazing. Like, legit good musical.
Well, I don't know if the music in this one was as good as Brave and the Bold, but
it was not.
The music meister comes, he zaps Kara into a coma, and then he zaps a music coma, and then he zaps Barry into the music coma, and they wake up in this created reality of their own creation because Barry loves musicals and Kara loves musicals. So they create this reality in which they're basically in a musical movie, and in order to get out, they have to follow the script. And then if they follow the script, they make it out alive.
I love the music meister.
So the script is basically they're these singers for this gangster. They're connected to this gangster who want them to sing in this nightclub, and then they're at war with some other gangsters and blah 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 whatever.
His name matches Malone.
It might be. I can't remember. Joe West is one of the gangsters, and then the guy from Arrow. I don't know because I don't watch Arrow.
Stephen Amell?
No. Not there's a bad guy, I guess, a heavy on Arrow that shows up as the opposing. So it's a West. They cite West Side Story as some influence between as far as Iris and the dude who plays Mon-El in Supergirl. They're Forbidden Love. So there's West Side Story in there, and then some stuff from Singing in the Rain. So they have all these different influences that are in there. But anyway, I thought it was really cute. I was surprised again at friggin' Barry and Kara's singing ability and dancing ability. I think you'd like it, Lisa. But again, I need you to watch it to tell me if I'm wrong about the music choices.
Okay.
Put a little love in your heart is one of them. This is weird.
So it's like a jukebox musical. It's like where they take pop songs and they didn't write original music.
Some of them are pop songs. Yeah, there is no original music. I don't think. But all the songs are pre-existing.
Brave and the Bold was original music.
So no original ones.
True.
Unless the song that Barry sings for Iris back in the real world when he proposes to her again. That's a really good sing too.
Maybe you could hum a few bars. I'll see if I know.
I don't know if that was actually from the show. So
it was lovely though. I got into it.
Yeah. So yeah, that was my Weekend Dork.
No, it wasn't.
Oh, I watched Zatoichi again last night. Lisa, I'm debating on giving you that for homework assignment just because I want to talk about it. And I love, speaking of music and film.
Give her all 27 Zatoichi movies.
No, I mean Beat Takashi's Zatoichi. The music is used in that film in a way that just, it places a warm shell over my heart for the duration of that film. And everything else is just icing on the top. I love that movie.
Delicious.
I love that movie.
A warm shell?
Yeah.
Icing on top?
Yeah.
Is it magic shell?
Yeah.
That's just bananas.
Don't eat my shell. So anyway, yeah. That's my weekend.
No.
What else?
It's not. You also saw The Void. We both watched The Void.
Yeah.
You did not like The Void. I saw your Facebook post.
I like the opening. I like the opening and the setup. I love a good. Firstly, we talked about it before. I love a siege film, but I love a movie where shit hits the fan like right off the bat when a movie starts. Like I love those types of films, but rarely are they able to keep up that momentum and maintain. And as you mentioned a few times, Brett, you famously always say stick the landing. And for me, like this movie kind of lost
the ending.
It kind of lost me in the third act.
That third act was great.
I was like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, exactly. What the fuck is going on?
Like, I didn't understand, like, the doctor's motivation. Oh, I understood his motivation, but I just didn't get it. Like, how did he come upon
to me,
to
like,
do
okay,
this?
like, hold on. All right. The Void, I don't want to spoil anything. I certainly don't want to spoil the ending.
Yeah.
But it opens up. There's some gunshots in the dark. Two guys chase after another dude after they've killed this woman and lit her on fire. A cop finds the guy, takes him to the hospital, and shit goes down. There's some hooded figures. There's some weird mythology going
There's
around.
some Knives Chow, which delights me to no end.
Knives Chow from Scott Pilgrim, Lisa. Lisa's like, back to my game of threes on my iPhone. She does
I
not,
do like to play threes.
she does not care
I'm
about
an
the Void.
introvert. We've been talking for like 2 hours. I've got to zone out or I'll go into a rage.
But for me, what I liked so much about The Void is that it is a siege film. It is certainly inspired by Assault on Precinct 13. I think there's a little bit of Prince of Darkness in there. A lot of people throw Hellraiser around. I get why they're saying that.
Yeah.
I don't think it's not Hellraiser, guys.
Yeah.
But this was the type of film that dropped in the 70s, cheap. Actors aren't that great, but there's a lot of enthusiasm and there's a lot of creativity practically.
Oh man.
And this felt like a proper grindhouse movie in an era of wolf cops and Hobo with the Shotguns and Kung Fury. This felt like a proper descendant of 1970s exploitation cinema.
Oh, with some great head explosions too.
And there's some great head explosions, and there may or may not be monsters. There's monsters.
Yeah.
And I dug them.
Yeah, I dug the creature.
I really liked it.
Yeah.
And I was sad that you didn't.
I just didn't like the ending. Like the ending.
I loved the ending.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Sorry. But yeah,
Triangle.
Check it out. You may love it. I just needed some explanation as to what all that shit
You don't
was.
need an explanation. Just weird shit happened, man.
Like what is?
It's
I
a
want
horror
to know
film.
what the triangle is.
No.
Please,
no.
tell me.
No.
All right.
Beyond the Black Rainbow. Who the fuck knows?
I don't know. That movie is fucking nuts. So yeah, that was my weekend dork. That's going to do it for us. What do you got coming up? Film Club Die Hard. Die Hard was Brian's pick for our next ItMod Film Club. You have a few weeks to watch that.
You've got a month.
Yeah, you got a month to watch that again because you should have already seen it 1,000 times. So you should already have your notes and questions and anecdotes ready for us.
Hashtag ItMod Film Club.
Hashtag Die Hard. Hashtag Yippee-ki-yay motherfuck. Also, be on the lookout for our Fistful of Furious family in honor of Fast 8, Fate of the Furious, which drops soon.
And we'll have a review cast for that.
We'll have a review cast for that. And be on the lookout for ItMod month, the month of May. ItMod cast has been invited to the Alamo in Winchester. We will each have a weekend of that month to screen and host a film of our choosing. It's a secret still what those films are, so keep waiting.
I'm tired of it being a secret, Darren.
Don't worry. We'll let the cat out of the bag. Also, be on the lookout for our interview cast, our chat cast with Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead. They're doing the rounds promoting their film, The Endless, which I can't wait to talk about that film. I can't wait to everybody to watches that film so I can talk about it with other people because, holy shit.
It's a thinker.
Yeah. There's just a moment in there where I just took me by surprise. So yeah, be on the lookout for that too. You can follow the podcast at ItModcast on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can follow Wife Dork at Sidewalk Siren on Twitter and Instagram. And Brian Young is the Turtle Dork only on Twitter because on Instagram he's the Turtle Dork 1, and also because on Facebook he's Brian William Young. Brad Gullickson conveniently is at Mouth Dork on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Letterboxd, and Untapped. And I'm Darren Smith, the Disco Dork, just the Disco Dork, on Instagram, Facebook, Letterboxd, and Snapchat. And that's going to do it for us. Thank you all for listening. Shout out to Brian, the Turtle Dork, who couldn't be here.
Because he's working.
Yeah. And until next time.